So Serral is just droning up, and he does start to secure a worker lead now. It's no super quick third command center with this build. It's it's a 3-1-1 opening. So the thing is, ByuN has not built an extra reactor yet or anything like that on his third barracks. It's just kind of producing Marines one at a time. It does now start its reactor, but not until he built a good little squad of Marines. And Serral very keen to see, what the heck is this opening? What are you going for here? Is it Hellbats? That's the big thing ByuN's known for recently. But in fact, sees a whole pack of Marines, does see 2 barracks. Ooh, he's not going to confirm that it's 3 barracks. The Overlord does see the Marines moving out here. Serral building a couple more Zerglings here. And the other Overlord will go down, though. Losing multiple Overlords could be a bummer. Oh, Serral's reactions are so good, though. Looks like he just barely saved that Overlord in the middle of the map. And he confirms, okay, this is a lot of Marines coming out across this map. He's building a lot of Ling Bane. The thing is, ByuN is not going to commit on creep. He's just going to walk over, pick off an Overlord, maybe do a scan, and then he's going to walk home. If he committed on creep, it would be an absolutely insane maneuver.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that I'm always a little scared of when it comes to ByuN, which is he's willing to do things that don't make sense, and somehow he just micros his way to magic and makes it happen, especially with Banelings that don't necessarily have speed yet. I mean, Lair is only just now going to be finishing. The Baneling nest only recently finished, so there's maybe a window where ByuN will try to be a tiny bit more aggressive, but without Medivacs or something to actually boost him out of there and have an escape plan, this is a very dangerous move to commit to.
Serral on 54 workers. No 4th hatchery started just yet, and the pressure is still here. So Serral's stuck in a bit of a holding pattern. He'd love to get a chance to get up another 10, 15 workers, take a 4th base, but he's having to build a lot more Ling Bane for now. You can see his drone there ready, but he can't actually secure the 4th just yet. He's going to try to take it. Queen Ling Bane looking good. ByuN, though, so many Marines. If you go off creep here, you do not have enough Ling Bane to take that out, especially without Baneling speed. Serral very low on gas. His double Evo's finished, but he actually can't afford to start 1-1 because he's being forced into so many Banelings. And this is the way you can pressure with this style. ByuN here constantly threatening, posturing as if he's going to commit, but not actually taking the fight. He's now boosting a medevac across. I think it has tanks inside, or at least 1 tank, and that could really make this position annoying. Actually, just another 10 Marines. It's pure Marine for now. It's all going to be about his control.
Yeah, there is a counterattack from Serral though, with a bunch of Lings moving in, and there's not really much of a wall to actually prevent them from going straight over the natural. They're going after the wall instead, which is buying ByuN a bit of time to micro, get up some more Marines, try and prepare things. So the Banelings try and roll on forward, but they still don't have Baneling speed for another 7-8 seconds. ByuN is trying to capitalize on this moment. He's starting to move on forward. Baneling's about to get Baneling speed as they roll off of creep, but ByuN fires down all of them, and now suddenly Serral has no Banelings left.
You cannot chase him off creep like that. The Lings do come in from behind, though, and ooh, can he focus down a medevac or 2? Wow, the Marines just gunning through. Wow, stim shields and medevac healing. He manages to hold on with that position, and that's a problem for Serral. If they're able to just keep reinforcing, and now with tanks coming in as well, ooh, the medevacs are low on juice. There's only 2. That is one thing that means there's not too much renewability, but how do you ever get rid of that tank? Serral right now, I mean, he might even need to give up this 4th base potentially. That 4th base is in trouble. He can't keep just beating into this. He needs to find a decisive engagement. All right, the Ling Bane on the far north is going to come in towards that 3rd base and start working on it. The wall gets up just in time. That may pressure ByuN into pushing forward on creep. Serral, though, he's got to be careful of those tanks. The tank there is there. He's going to go for it. Okay, the Banelings hit the tank, though. Oh, no. A lot of Banelings wasted on the tank, but enough Ling Bane to overwhelm. He gets rid of this push, and finally, Serral can hit that worker production. ByuN here, I think, really knows his opponent and wisely playing straight into tanks and libs. I mean, Lurkers and Hydras just not going to do that well if you've got a good tank count.
Yeah, if there's one thing I learned from watching ByuN versus Rogue is that he loves getting up a solid tank count to help deal with a lot of those kind of lurker plays and everything later on. Well, cleaning up a handful more of those creep tumors, ByuN is trying to open up the ways to move forward, but Serral is already preparing for a flank from the top right-hand side to hit in behind this army while he sets up another Baneling drop. It feels like Serral is just a few moves ahead strategically on this.
Oh, here we go. He's coming in from behind, but the units on the south are a little slow. But oh, the Banelings on the right-hand side, they actually smash through the Marines. The tanks are all taken out. A few tanks over here. The Marines trying to get back to the high ground. No, it does end up defending the high ground. The Baneling drop, though, in the main at the same time, I think, ready to go in. Oh, he's going to unload the shadows. Comes in by surprise. He's going to take out a lot of SCVs.
5 SCVs, a bit fewer than I thought he would be able to get with the 4 Banelings, but definitely some nice damage. Gonna be able to slow down some of the mining in the main base. And well, ByuN is continuing to try and push on in toward that hatchery. He's cleaned up most of the creep tumors in front of it, so Serral feels like that's gonna be the trigger point. Moves on forward, snipes off the first siege. Liberators doing some damage from the air, but they gradually get sniped off. ByuN has enough Marines and units to fall back to.
Wow, the Lib survives, the tank survives in the rear of that. That costs Serral a lot. That was an amazing trade for ByuN. And now he's reinforcing. He's got the faster 3-3 on the way. It's all Ling Bane being rebuilt right now. I don't think Hydras really add too much to this army. It's all about the Ling Bane count. And without an army coming in from behind, ByuN, when he's able to just micro in one direction, it's so hard to hang on. Serral's got to buy time here. He's dropping Zerglings in the main. They're going to come in and do some big damage behind this. But he's being baited into a frontal fight before that, and Serral cannot commit into this tank line.
The SCVs are starting to go down in that main base, like you said. And remember, it's just a little extra APM tasking right now. ByuN is not really pushing forward because he's dealing with those Lings. And now, finally, he's dealt with the Lings. So now he can afford the APM to push forward. Does Serral have enough Banelings now made, though, to try and break through this again?
Oh, here we come. Massive Ling Bane assault. The Viper comes forward. A good blinding cloud on 2 of those tanks, but the 3 tanks in the back. Wow, they are making Serral pay a tax for this. And abduct on one of the Liberators, but 2 tanks and the Liberators survive in the back. And every time you take a trade like that, I mean, if we take a glance at the units lost tab, it's going to be getting really good for ByuN. That gap is going to get bigger and bigger every time there's a fight where the Terran keeps some of those units alive. Remember, the Terran has so many units rallying across the map. That's most of the Zerg army engaging, washing up against it. It's these backstabs Serral needs to do. He's got to find an opening somewhere, but there's Marines ready behind that wall. The Sensor Tower is spotting it, and the way ByuN has got that forward base to kind of reinforce his push, he's got a great army. The Lib count, the tank count looking good. 3-3 is going to be kicking in soon. Serral, he's hanging on, but he's a little down in supply and he's down in workers, and that's never good for a Zerg player.
And looks like the Lurkers are kind of in range. He's going to use the Vipers, actually abduct a couple of these siege tanks. Very, very nicely done. Getting some good pickoffs here and there wherever he can. And remember, Serral also is still playing some catch up with those upgrades, since you do get started with those melee upgrades and, the ranged upgrades a little bit later on than the Terran player does. So this 3-3 will be eventually finishing up, and he'll have a nice little advantage there, but he'll end up seeing big committal over here from Serral. The blinding cloud's gonna help out quite a bit. Is this actually enough to break through, though? Yeah,
Bad engagement for Serral. Yeah, I can hear it in your voice there, Fear Dragon. Yeah. I definitely agree. We've seen Serral, when he gets in a head position, sometimes against Protoss, but more often against Terran recently, sometimes does start getting a bit too crazy with his Baneling engagements. And it feels like he's like, oh, I'm maxed, I got bank, I better trade. But sometimes the trades just look a bit uninspiring, because when the tanks are spread out like that, and you end up kind of crashing into a Marauder tank with just Banelings, they're not efficient off creep like that. You really need to catch your opponent out of position. Maybe a big attack here on the natural where there's only 2 tanks covering it could be powerful. He's going for a Nidus Worm and a double Spire. Serral, I think, realizing this game is going to go for a lot longer.
A greater Spire on the way. This has always been a contentious topic for many a Zerg player. Like, do Broodlords actually still have a place in the matchup and everything? You'll hear some Zerg players say, no, they're absolutely useless. But yeah, looks like Serral is one of those believers that maybe there is still going to be that value when there's still so many siege tanks out.
If he was hitting a Broodlord timing right now, especially if he had a few Infestors back it up, I think it would immediately win the game, Fear Dragon. Honestly, look at what ByuN is doing. You might be like, it's Biotank Ghost. Not really, it's mass tank at this point. That's almost all. Yes, he's got some Ghosts that cover it, but you can deal with Ghosts with a mixture of Overseers, Broodlord, Micro, Stutter Step, and Fungal if the Ghosts run too far forward. You know what? It's 15 tanks. He's building mostly mass tank at the moment. He's swapping into a sort of siege tank ghost, almost mech sort of setup. If Serral goes for a round of Broodlords, it can be an absolute game winner. He's got the 8 Corruptors. He's got 4 Infestors there. He's got to trade some units off, though. He doesn't have supply free, and I think he's got to find that timing sooner rather than later, because notice that ByuN has a lot of insurance now. Planetary in the top right. That's going to help against Broodlords. He's got missile turrets all over. The Broodlords still have not morphed, and it becomes more and more of a situation where it's like, hey, you really don't want to just have Corruptors in this scenario. You've got to actually find a way in at the right moment. Serral goes to morph Broods, realizes he only got supply for 1. How does he trade off supply here?
Yeah, that is pretty brutal, but ByuN may actually be able to solve that problem for him as he starts to push on forward. Fungal growth on this Marine clump, and Serral realizes, oh, maybe I don't trade supply here. Maybe I just take yours.
Yeah, that's the fungal efficiency, right? but he sends almost all of his ground army to the left. Nope, oh my lord. Okay, ByuN has studied what loses you games in late game as Terran, and that is you not having enough static defense. So he says, I'll build my one static defense, a planetary covering my production, tanks and libs and turrets covering it. The right-hand side, tons of static to defend the Vipers as well, the Corruptors. The Broodlords are now morphing. Has he waited a little bit too long? I don't think there's any Vikings on the map, so I still think he could definitely find his way in here. And it is just 8 Broodlords, right? A lot of people are like, that's, they'll get counted. They will eventually, but it's about can they do enough damage to be worth it before those Vikings arrive.
To give everyone an idea, there's 1 starport, and that's all the production right now. We don't even actually see more starports on the way. Now a starport immediately starts up as the Broodlords reveal themselves in the raw sheer numbers that they have. These missile turrets gonna do little to actually abate the massive number of Broodlords just continuing to harass at this army. Some bioforces are gonna try and stim forward, but they really should not be able to get in on top of these Broodlords, especially with the infestors there.
Yeah, very patient play here by Serral. Of course, it is only a few infestors, so 1 good EMP, and those Broodlords are wide open for snipe. He's got to be careful. Micro does pick off that building there. The ghosts come forward, but a fungal, that's exactly what he needed to do. Now, all the infestors are out of energy at this point, but he takes out a few of those ghosts. Well done by Serral. Okay, 1 more infestor comes forward. It's full of energy. If those ghosts come forward, they're going to get caught by fungal, and it's that fungal Broodlord combo that deals with the ghosts so well. You need a few Vikings in there as well.
Siege Tank's gonna do a lot of friendly fire to these ghosts that are getting hit by the Broodlords. The Broodlords finding so much value because it's not just the Broodlings doing damage, it's all the Siege Tanks friendly firing, unless ByuN is directly target firing a unit at that given moment. And we see that Serral, he's doing this little bits and pieces of damage. If he's able to deny this base, Pig, that actually might just, make up for all the cost efficiency problems because he's taken the bottom left-hand side base that's on ByuN's side of the map in a sense.
Well, he might just straight up win the game with these Broodlords. They're being used so efficiently right now, and he's forcing out Vikings. He's already taken out so many units, and this is it. He just couldn't find a way in, but when your opponent's just on mass siege tank like that, for the most part, there really is a weakness there. There almost always is, and I think ByuN had the perfect setup against a Zerg who's going to crash ground units into you repeatedly. But the one weak spot was not having those extra starports ready. He was a little slow, I think, getting his extra orbitals up and a bit more focused on muling. I think he should have been doing more foraging scans where he's saying, hey, check the composition, check for a tech switch. Tech switch is a Zerg's one powerful thing in late game. You've got to be ready for it. If he had a few Vikings out here with the ghost to pick away from afar, well, guess what? There was no Corruptors out initially. Now there's some Corruptors, but he would have been able to keep this back. He would have been able to make it a lot harder for Serral to take those trades, and definitely a big win there for Serral. Even though the base stands, Serral's still rotating his Hydra Bane around, looking for new angles. ByuN's trying to expand to that middle base down there, but that's going to be very exposed.
Yeah, I don't see a way for that orbital command center to actually land with all those Banelings around. And we end up seeing, the Vikings are even getting picked off over here by the Queens. The Planetary Fortress gonna get friendly fire down by the Siege Tanks. It goes down. The Banelings rolling on forward on the left-hand side. Gonna deny another one of these bases.
Ooh, okay. Does take out the tanks, but pulls back. The bio there does end up hanging on, but ByuN's economy has been battered and bruised. He's losing everything in the top right. All the tanks and ghosts are going down. Another fungal landed on top. There's still more infestor energy. I love the way Serral dances those infestors. Notice he just brings them forward. He's looking for the fungal. Oh, he's got to watch out for the EMP, though. Does not want to run those infestors around in a comp.
Ooh. Well, that's the EMP that ByuN was looking for. He's going to go for a bunch of snipes over here. He's still taking a lot of damage from the Broodlords in the meanwhile, losing a couple of ghosts here and there. The Medevac's keeping them alive. It looks like he has enough to hold on, but I feel like hold on is literally the way I can describe it right now, Pig, because you look down at the supplies and you look at the banks and you start to realize, oh, you still only have one finger on the ledge right now. How do you trade out your supply? I guess, how do you solve a lot of those problems that ByuN had trouble solving even after he did see the Broodlords?
Hold on a moment. I'm just going to tweet Thermal and see what he has to say. Because I think there's Terran players who have a much better understanding of it than me in terms of the finesse. But I think it does come down to each player has a different preference. These Broodlords working fantastically, by the way. Just continually moving around and always shooting and pulling back, shooting and pulling back. Great micro. I think having a small squad of Vikings is good. I don't think you want to go heavy on Vikings because Parasitic Bomb and Fungal do destroy them. but it at least then forces the Zerg into things like Corruptors to cover them. So a couple Vikings is really good as like a range zoning tool that you keep trying to use to say, hey, your Broodlord's going to take damage whenever they poke forward. I think you can get a few Thors out, obviously, as great Broodlord killers. The one problem the Thors have is against the spellcasters. But wow, look at this dance, and the fungal lands again on the Ghost. It's just spectacular control, mass transfuse, the Band-Aids just blanketing those Broodlords. And that is just a powerful push forward. You know, ByuN's losing units, and Serral's just sieging him down. It's like using a bunch of catapults to just land damage from afar. Serral's not really losing much at all.
Yeah, if it seems strange that we have this like casual conversation going on as we watch massive numbers of Marines and Ghosts and everything die, it's just because ByuN is already just in a really tough spot, and Serral is just doing an excellent job continuing to abuse the heck out of these Broodlords, and also just preventing the Viking count from really doing a whole lot, even as it tries to grow. Like, Queens are finding little opportunities to get pickoffs there. Corruptors getting snipe offs here and there.
I think the other big thing that ByuN could have done this game was nukes. Zoning nukes can really just hold Broodlords back so they can defend an area. Yes, it costs you money, but you can then be nuking elsewhere. You can be doing more bio run-bys elsewhere and drops and things like that. Once they go into Broodlords, the Zerg does become a little bit less mobile, right? So there's a shifting of gears and kind of who is the defensive player who's fighting in one big blob and who is the guy who's more mobile and more all over the place. So you're actually going to find a situation a lot of the time where basically the Zerg is more mobile, but then they swap to Broodlord Corruptor, Infestor Viper. None of these units are good at dealing with a drop, right? They're not good at running over and stopping run-bys and things like that. So there is like an option of doing a bit more drops, a bit more harassment, trying to wear them down and kind of use the bio to start running around the map and take advantage of that mobility. But these Broodlords right now, I mean, look at this. And Parasitic Bomb, Fungal lands on the Ghost again. He's so consistent. He runs the Infestors back, peels just one forward, drops a Fungal with that one. So he doesn't care if it cops an EMP. It gets the Fungal out before the EMP lands. And these Broodlords just raining down death and destruction. Again, another Fungal. And he pulls one back and chains it. Oh, perfect Infestor control from Serral.
Yeah, look at all those barely 1 health Marines that are gonna get healed up by those medevacs. But in the meanwhile, the Hydra Bane Force actually cleans up that orbital command. I want to note that Hydra Bane Force, by the way, has actually also been cleaning up 1 or 2 attempts at drops or run-bys from ByuN to the bottom left-hand base. So Serral has actually been dealing with some minor bits of harassment attempts there from ByuN, and ByuN just can't afford to do anything more. If he pulls more than 1 or 2 medevacs worth of units away from this side, he actually is just gonna lose this engagement. He's gonna lose this center location.
Oh, nice Fungals. Wow, this is bringing me back to Wings of Liberty. These Fungals are so thrown so well, so expertly. And I mean, just for you guys who remember Broodlord Infestor, keep in mind Serral was like 13, I think, during that time, maybe 12.
He was like, yeah.
He was a little kid. I mean, he was still playing tournaments and having fun and stuff. But yeah, definitely showing just some real understanding of how to use this composition. Oh, big Fungal lands though. He's out of Fungal energy now. The Link Bane Ranger says, okay, it's time. Let's go. The Corruptors will take out the Liberators. The Baneling's going to cram into that bio. So the bio Ghost on the left actually holds pretty strong for now. And ByuN here with an impressive hold of his army, defending Wave 1. And Serral says, now time to spend that $14,000 that I've got in the bank. Let's make just a tunneling Bane. It looks like Serral's actually out of lava. Maybe hasn't been injecting quite as well as he should have. But ByuN is on his last legs, and you know, okay, admirable fight from behind.
Links. That's why he literally made I think he used around like 50 larvae to just make 100 links. That's why.
Indeed. Not a bad way to go. More Broodlords. I mean, he kept some Broodlords alive as well. In these sort of scenarios, like, obviously, like, imagine if ByuN had a more even economy. When you remax, like, the player who keeps some of their units alive has such an advantage. So, like, if you lose all your Broodlords, Spellcasters, and they keep a whole lot of Ghosts alive, it's, like, pretty good for the Terran, because they've kind of got the answer already for those units if you rebuild them to some extent. And it's always a big advantage, though, if you can, like, okay, I traded all my Ling Bane, but hey, I've got some Broodlord Corruptor alive, I kept 2 Vipers alive, an Infestor, something like that. It really does make a big difference. And already, round 2 here, Serral says, okay, all right, it's time, mate. I'm going to crash on forwards. Biotank cannot withstand this.
ByuN is like, TY made it work. Maybe I can do it too. Holding on out, but it's just not really working out right now. We end up seeing the snipes coming off on some of those brood lords. So, I mean, a couple of good pickoffs, but again, all replaceable units here. And ByuN just can't mine right now. He's got actually a bunch of lings just burrowed in his mineral line. As soon as this army is busy, Serral unburrows those lings and kills all of these mules, and suddenly ByuN is actually not mining anymore.
Oh, when he only unburrows half on the first one as well. So ByuN walks away and the other half can unburrow, and they do. No, they don't. Okay. Thought they
Yeah, they do. There it is. All right, okay. ByuN just lost, I want to say, like 80% of his mining right there.
These underground spies, the infestors burrowing forward as well. Going to be tracking where that army is. The broodlords come forward. Ling, Bane, Hydra, look at the fungal from behind. No, it goes down. But I think there's still so much Ling Bane coming forward. The fire is spreading backwards. Micro Jackson digging deep. His fingers frantically working on that keyboard, and Mousy tries to evacuate some units, but Serral power overwhelming. A slow and just suffering finish there as Serral